Hello and welcome. You're watching The Buck Stops Here and I'm Barkha Dutt. Our focus continues to be on India's response after the terror attack in Uri. Sushma Swaraj has just finished her address at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, basically talking about how the terror that emanates from Pakistan is not just a problem for India, but is a problem for the entire world. Locating the terror attacks in Uri within the larger narrative of all the cities this past year that have been victims of terror, also invoking the 9/11 anniversary. She also, of course, brought up Baluchistan and said that when Pakistan takes the global stage to talk about human rights violations in India, it should not forget the brutal repression of its own people in Baluchistan, and it should look inwards within. We are going to be looking at Sushma Swaraj's speech, but there's another very important talking point that has come up in New Delhi. Let's shift to that now. The Prime Minister has chaired an all-important meeting called to review the Indus Waters Treaty, the water sharing agreement between India and Pakistan that has held through war, that has held through terrorism. But now the Prime Minister chairing a meet to review it, a meet attended by the Foreign Secretary as well as the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, a meeting at which the Prime Minister is said to have told those present blood and water cannot flow together. India will not be abrogating the treaty as has been suggested by some, including its own veteran leader Yashwant Sinha. However, there is a much tougher stand. Let's shift to those graphics now. The Indus Water Commission talks have been suspended. The commission will not be meeting as long as terrorism remains an issue. There is also a decision to maximize the potential of what the water that India is entitled to. India, remember, is entitled to 20% of the water of the Indus River basin, and that has not happened. Every time India has tried to build a dam, you have actually seen Pakistan dragging India to international arbitration. We can in fact see those graphics on the screen. So the decision to maximize the potential and to take a much tougher stand at a meeting where the Prime Minister has said that blood and water cannot flow together. I beg your pardon. Let's go across now to Yashwant Sinha, who first recommended the abrogation of this treaty. Mr. Sinha, before we get to the treaty, your first comments on Sushma Swaraj's address.
Well, I think it was very well done. She balanced the various components which she had to include in her speech extremely well, and she talked about our own progress, our own developmental goals, and how they gel with the UN developmental goals. And then she talked about the Convention on Terrorism proposed by India, which is pending. And then she came to Pakistan. And as you said a little while ago, she did point out to the rest of the world how terrorism was a threat to every country, and terrorism originating from Pakistan was a threat to the whole world. And she minced no words. I think a very strong message has been sent by her to our western neighbor.
Mr. Sinha, the initial remarks of the Congress say that she was ambiguous. She stopped short of calling Pakistan a terror state. She did not ask for sanctions. How do you see this criticism from the Congress?
Well, you know, we could not have made this speech entirely Pakistan-centric as Nawaz Sharif did and made his speech India-centric. I mean, as I said, there had to be a balance, and I think Sushma Swaraj has maintained that balance. And to talk about declaring Pakistan as a terrorist state, and asking for sanctions, you know, a lot of work has to be done before you actually formally move these proposals. And the UN General Assembly is not coming to an end. The discussions will go into the committees, and we'll have ample opportunities to do both what the Congress party is suggesting.
So you're saying that India could yet take the global stage and talk about sanctions against Pakistan, talk about Pakistan being a terror state. Sushma Swaraj did not have to pack all of that into this address.
That's exactly what I am saying.
Sir, you have written quite provocatively that sometimes the road to peace must go through war. You've actually openly called for military action. we saw a very different tone, some would say, by the Prime Minister, who spoke about how the war that needs to be fought is the war against poverty. Do you see a different response from the government than one you would have anticipated or advocated?
You know, I wrote that the road to peace passes through war at times because of the historical experience everywhere, that you are trying for peace, and your adversary is not interested in peace, and then war is the only solution. But I was also picking up from what the DGMO of this own government, this government said, that we'll respond militarily at a place and time of our choosing. And this sentiment was reflected also by the defense minister. So when I said that there should be a military response, I don't think I was in a minority of one. I think the mood in the entire country today is that there should also be a military response, along with various other responses, and the Indus Waters Treaty is one of them. In fact, I had suggested in the same article in which I wrote those lines that the most favored nation treatment that India had extended to Pakistan in 1996 and which has not been reciprocated by Pakistan all these 20 years is something which India should withdraw. And this is something nobody and absolutely nobody can protest at this move of India. And this is a step we can take immediately.
Yes.
So there are many steps which can be taken. I am very glad to hear that we have decided that the Indus Water Commission will not function until Pakistan stops terrorism, and that is a very positive step as far as we are concerned.
Now, let's first talk about the Indus Water Treaty. We saw the Prime Minister chairing this meet today where he said blood and water cannot flow together. But Mr. Sinha, you had in fact spoken about abrogating the treaty, and you said that, you know, India, you said on NDTV.com, in fact, that India's too scared of always wanting to be this well-behaved school child. You have been foreign minister, you have held many different portfolios, you're a senior politician. When you were in government, you saw some very severe terror attacks, you saw a war, you saw an attack on parliament. You did not at that time consider abrogating this treaty. What has changed your mind?
You know, 2001, 2016 is not 2001. We have 15 years of history in between, and this option was considered. But in 2001, after the parliament attack, let's not forget that it led to massive mobilization of Indian troops along the border and the LOC for a period of time, and it was an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation with Pakistan.
Yes.
This was considered. It was not adopted at that point of time, but I think we have reached a stage in the last 15 years where this option must be considered. And I did talk about the abrogation of the treaty, but let me qualify by saying that you know, the very preamble of this treaty talks about in a spirit of goodwill and friendship. 1960, we talked about the spirit of goodwill and friendship. 2016, can we say that that spirit of goodwill and friendship informs our relationship with Pakistan today? And the other point which I'd like to make to you is, this treaty says very clearly that it will be terminated by a duly ratified treaty concluded for that purpose between the two governments. Which means what? That the treaty provisions provide for abrogating the treaty.
Yes.
And when I say abrogate the treaty, it will mean that we will issue a notice to Pakistan and send a copy to the World Bank saying that, you know, the circumstances have changed materially and therefore we want to abrogate the treaty. Then the discussions will begin. In the meanwhile, there are a whole lot of things that we can do within the treaty.
Which is the decision today?
I'm sure.
Which is the decision
Beg
that
pardon?
I said that is the decision the government appears to have taken for now, to stay within the treaty and maximize its potential for India. Are you disappointed with that outcome? Right. Would you have wanted an absolute abrogation? You have advocated an absolute abrogation.
I'm just saying, but an absolute abrogation, Barkha, will involve giving a notice to the parties to this treaty, which is Pakistan and the World Bank. And suppose we were to give that notice and we expect them to respond, then it will set in process the motion for the abrogation of that treaty. And we have some very strong reasons for doing what I am suggesting Government of India to do.
So you are still saying eventually, once you go through this process, you should abrogate this treaty, because there has been an argument, Mr. Sinha, that the moment the Prime Minister separated and distinguished the people of Pakistan from the regimes that run Pakistan, which is what he did in his weekend address, India cannot, there is one argument, cannot be seen to be punishing the people of Pakistan, and abrogating this treaty would in fact punish the people, because it could potentially cause drought and famine on the other side.
Barkha, for 56 years, we have been punishing the people of Jammu and Kashmir. You go and ask anyone in Jammu and Kashmir, and they will say, they are saying it even today, that the treaty is very, very bad for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And for 56 years, they have suffered because of this treaty. And in 1960, I do not know what overcame India, that we settled for terms as onerous, as unfavorable to India as the treaty provisions are. So we have to balance.
Do you believe, therefore, it is legitimate and even desirable to actually renege on this international treaty, even if it causes deprivation at a human level on the other side? Because you're saying that's what Pakistan has done to J&K, so we have to give it back to them in their own methodology.
I am not saying Pakistan. No. I am not saying Pakistan has done. The treaty has done to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because it is very unfavorable to them. Now, you are talking of the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan must realize what their rulers are doing, what the army of Pakistan is doing. And if the people of Pakistan are not in a position to put pressure on their government and on their army, then it's a very bad case. And maybe any threat to abrogate the treaty will make the people of Pakistan realize the gravity of the injustice which is being done to India through the export of terrorism. And maybe they will do something to their rulers and to their army.
So what I'm hearing from you, and you're absolutely right, that the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly actually passed a unanimous resolution in 2003 to abrogate this treaty. They actually believe that there's a huge financial loss to them to not be allowed to use more of their water of their own rivers. You believe that eventually the government must head in that direction, Mr. Sinha. Do you accept the argument that there are people who believe that the reputation of India as a responsible nation, which is clearly the tone that Sushma Swaraj tried to strike in her address, as a nation that takes the high road, that reputation would globally suffer? Or are you arguing that the world isn't going to help you anyway? China has reneged just now on an international treaty on the South China Sea. So why is India so scared?
Why are we so sensitive about our image, our reputation? Why are we worried about it all the time? I just can't understand. Because people realize this very national character of India, Pakistan especially, goes on hitting us whenever they want. And, a nation which is weak in its will never be a great nation. It is important for India to be great, and it's important for India to have a strong willpower in order to be great. This is what I believe, and we can't go on having terrorist strikes every few days in our territory. People get killed. Isn't that something which bothers those who are so concerned about the global image of India?
Let me ask you, because you have seen terror and you've seen literally an act of war with that parliament attack when you were minister. You've seen the Kargil war. What is the one thing that you did not do, and when I say you, I mean the BJP government last time did not do in power, that you believe was a mistake and that you would advise this government to do vis-a-vis Pakistan?
The mistake we made was that we did not immediately undertake a limited military attack on Pakistan. We should have done that immediately after the parliament attack. And, I personally feel that when I said that there should be a military response to Uri, this is exactly what I meant. And, the time is passing away, and the sooner it happens, the better. And India must state once and for all that we cannot be messed around with in the manner in which we have been messed around for the last 25, 30 years.
So you're actually saying that Operation Parakram, which saw that massive mobilization of troops, sir, at the border in 2002, which actually saw more than 700 soldiers die, not in war but in demining, the mistake was that it did not translate into a cross-border limited military attack, and that is what you think is something the government must do now. That is what you're actually saying with all things considered.
Operation Parakram was part of coercive diplomacy. We have gone beyond that now. And I am saying that this time it must include, one of the options must be a limited strike at the terrorist camps in Pakistan.
And you believe it was a mistake that your government did not do, your government, I mean the previous NDA government did not do that. You're saying that was a mistake.
We had the opportunity in 2001 and we missed that opportunity.
Yashwant Sinha, very strong words from you, veteran politician, former union minister. Pleasure to have you on the program tonight. Yashwant Sinha saying, one, you still have to move towards abrogating the Indus Waters Treaty. Why is India so obsessed with what the world might think of it? Two, saying the mistake we made in our previous stint in power was to not go for a limited military strike after the attack on Parliament, and the government must do that now. Those are very strong words from one of its own leaders.